Michigan's favored by 13.5 points over Maryland. Maryland stands at 4-6, 1-6 in Big Ten Conference play. This is a needed win for the Terrapins to go bowling. For Michigan, they need a win here because even if they beat Ohio State, they won't get to the playoffs if they lose this game. And this is a losable game based on Michigan's track record throughout the season, where they have looked pretty poorly on the road. This is a road game, even though they're 8-2, 6-1, and ranked 18th in the college football playoff rankings, and a little bit higher than that in the AP and coaches poll. This is a team that is not power rated any higher than 15th. They're a top 20, top 25 power rated team. And ultimately, on the road, those teams are very susceptible to losing. And Michigan has won a lot of these close games and eked it out. But if anything, that's an indication at some point they won't eke it out in a close game. So why not here? It'll be a 4 p.m. Eastern time game on the Big Ten Network. Again, it's a look-ahead spot for that Ohio State game. So Michigan and their staff and their locker room, they need to be prepared here. And they cannot overlook this Maryland team. They cannot not take Michigan, or Maryland rather, seriously. I mean, Maryland has to take Michigan seriously, and I imagine they will. This is a pretty big spot for the Terrapins, too, fighting for bowl eligibility, because they should beat Michigan State if they were to win this game against Michigan. Michigan needs to win here and then beat Ohio State to reach the college football playoff. It was talked about in the Cover 3 podcast a bit today that even if Michigan beats Ohio State and beats Maryland, it's unlikely that they will go to the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis because of how weak their conference schedule is. And that's determined by combined wins and losses of their conference opponents averaged into a win percentage. And whoever has the highest win percentage in a three-way tie, well, they get to go to Indy. So what Michigan needs is it to be a two-way tie between the Buckeyes and themselves. They cannot have a three-way tie with either USC or Oregon, as that will default to USC or Oregon going to the Big Ten championship game. So for Michigan, if you want to go to the Big Ten, you got to be rooting not just to win out, but for other teams to lose. I would argue, though, if you're Michigan, you do just want to win out, and you do not want to go to the Big Ten championship game, because I don't know if you can put two great performances back-to-back against Ohio State and Indiana in the Big Ten championship game and win both of those games. And a 10-3 Michigan might get left out of the playoffs. A 10-2 Michigan, I know for sure, does not get left out of the playoffs. And it's not even a guarantee that Michigan wins this game or beats Ohio State. All hands have to be on deck. They have to continue to get healthy, and they have to clean up some of those turnover issues that they've had in back-to-back games against Purdue and Northwestern. For Maryland, they are on a 6-game losing streak, and they are on a 3-game losing streak of losing by more than one score, by 2 or more scores. It's been rough. They looked to have a potentially good defense early on. Metrics said it was elite. I called that a paper tiger, but still thought they at least had an okay defense. That is a total mirage, and their offense is absolutely horrible. This is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. It's already been announced that Mike Locksley is coming back for Maryland, and they're just going to try to invest more in NIL in the transfer portal. I think that, and that's regardless of whether or not they beat Michigan or Michigan State, I think that's a capitulation. They're content with where they're at, and that's okay. Wisconsin, it's more of a capitulation, though, given their history, that they're bringing Fickle back and are going to try to invest in NIL. Looking at the Michigan game and the Michigan State game, they ideally need to win both, because missing a bowl with this schedule for the second year in a row, when you also had an easy schedule last year, is not a good look. If they can at least win one of those games, and they don't end at an 8-game losing streak, and maybe they have some momentum entering next year. Ideally, you want to pull off the upset here, though, against a ranked team, earn Locksley's biggest win of his career at Maryland, and then beat Michigan State, go to a bowl game, and then you really have some momentum entering next season. Some key players to keep in mind and to pay attention to. The quarterbacks, Malik Washington and Bryce Underwood. Some running backs, DeJean Williams and Jordan Marshall. Also, pay attention to Alan Herron, Maryland's best tackle. For Michigan, center Greg Crippen, who's been phenomenal for the second half of the year. And also wide receiver Andrew Marsh for Michigan, who is Michigan's wide receiver one, could be returning punts from here on out. So he'll be all over the field. Defensively, it's about these defensive lines. So Derek Moore, Jayshon Barham, Trey Pierce, Rayshawn Benny, Trey Williams for Michigan, Damon Payne, and for Maryland, Cam Rice, Zahir Mathis, Sidney Stewart. You also got to look out for Cole Sullivan for Michigan, their best linebacker, along with Ernest Hausman. Michigan is a better team than Maryland, pretty significantly. They're better on offense. They're better on defense. Special teams, I don't know. Michigan special teams has been pretty atrocious this year. With Maryland special teams, they have not been awesome. I do not think they've been all that good either. With special teams, it's always pretty hard to judge because a lot of special teams is just mental. So sometimes really bad special teams units can have phenomenal games. I think about Ohio State's last year against Indiana, where their special teams unit had a really good game, but they were not a good special teams unit overall, for example. So that position has a lot of variance to it. And we've seen that with Michigan this year, where Zavada has a strong leg. Zavada can still, make accurate kicks and hit from long distance, but he's missed some that seem to be mental mistakes. Michigan's punting game has been pretty hit or miss, and the return game has been absolutely dreadful. Looking at the quarterbacks between the Wolverines and the Terrapins, I don't know between these two exactly who's better, but if I had to lean one way, if I really had to, it would be the quarterback who's played Oklahoma on the road, who's played Washington. This channel will make you a college football expert and help you enjoy watching games and make more accurate predictions. So what are you waiting for? Like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, comment your thoughts, and watch the video all the way through so that you can get the full package. And check the description and pinned comment for more ways to help yourself and this channel. Who has played USC on the road? I know that Maryland has played Indiana, but that is pretty much it. They also got Washington at home. Yeah, but you're talking about playing UCLA, playing Rutgers, playing Illinois, playing Wisconsin, for example, Nebraska. Underwood has a higher completion percentage. Underwood has fewer interceptions. He averages 1.5 more yards per attempt, has a higher passer rating, and a significantly higher QBR, actually. So I would go with Underwood here to be the better quarterback in this matchup. I know Malik Washington's received some hype. Malik Washington, I do think, is a good QB. Does have a worse supporting cast than what Underwood has. Yes, he's not quite as talented. Underwood's made some throws that Washington has also matched at times, though I've seen them more from Underwood, and the supporting cast is better. So if Maryland's going to win this game, they have to have some things go their way. They have to play closer to their ceiling than Michigan, which I think, given the spot of this game, is very realistic. And Michigan has to continue to have turnover issues. That goes with Bryce Underwood, too, not just Michigan as a whole team. Some keys to this game. There's the want it factor. So Michigan is looking ahead to Ohio State. We know this. That's their Super Bowl. Michigan, they're limited. They can't win it all this year. The best they can hope for, the best finish to the season from who they are, is you win out, you beat Ohio State, you win your first-round playoff game, and then you go home in the quarterfinals. That is the absolute best-case scenario. Probability says they lose one of these games between Maryland and Ohio State. They split them. Most likely beat Maryland, lose to Ohio State. That's what probability says. Everything's in front of them, though. And what would be more important out of that two-game stretch is beating Ohio State, even if it means you lose to this bad Maryland team. The win over Ohio State would mean a lot to a team that is better than it was last year from a power ratings angle, that is recruiting better and leveling up its roster. and that will probably make some staff changes. And I imagine based on what those staff changes will probably be, it's more likely than not those staff changes result in upgrades than downgrades. Michigan is a program that is trending up. The question is, how far up are they trending? Because if it's not at a certain angle, if the rise over run isn't high enough, then Sherrone Moore will fail, even if they're trending up from where they were last year. If it is at a certain point, though, then Sherrone Moore will succeed. And a lot of that can come down to this year's game against Ohio State. You got to keep in mind that a lot of people, even if Michigan were to somehow win the next 5 years in a row, will view Michigan beating Ohio State as a fluke more than anything, due to the Tressel and Meyer years, and also due to Ohio State's brand on top of those things and how many NFL players were produced by that university, and they have kids and they tell the stories. And because Ohio State is this really big brand and really proud program and as the largest fan base in America, once you're in there, you're in there. It's like Michigan. Like Michigan and Ohio State are cults, and Ohio State's the biggest one. So, yeah, Michigan needs that win. They really need it every year. I would actually say more so than Ohio State. They need that win. But the want-it factor's there, not just for that game, but for this game too, because oftentimes in college football, unless you're the elite teams, and by elite, I don't mean relative to a season. I mean the elite teams across multiple seasons. They can get up for every game. But a team like Michigan can't. A team like Maryland can't. And Maryland could be a corpse. Maryland could already be in quit mode, and they're just waiting for next year to roll around. We'll see that this Saturday. For rush defense, it's going to be really important because if Michigan is looking ahead, they're just going to want to run the ball. They're going to want to get out of there and make this game 2 hours and 30 minutes. Michigan, they're only allowing 4.1 yards per carry. That is a top 20 rushing defense, 18th in yards per carry. For Maryland, they're allowing 5.28 yards per carry, which is outside the top 90, one of the worst in America. So that favors Michigan for sure, especially when you factor that Maryland can't run the ball and Michigan is one of the best rushing offenses in America. What about quarterback play? Between Malik Washington and Bryce Underwood, who is the superior quarterback? Let me know what you think down in the comments section. And then I think the first team that reaches 3 sustainable drives, and by that I mean drives that are, you're not getting the ball inside of midfield on your opponent's territory, and you're able to produce a balanced attack and not just tons of explosives. The first team that gets there, if any team does, is going to win. And as for special teams, which unit helps out their team the most, which causes the most harm? I believe that Michigan has a lot of advantages here, outside of maybe their passing offense against a Maryland passing defense that has a good pass rush and some good safeties and cornerbacks. A lot goes Michigan's way here, but I don't really trust them to come out and dominate in a way that they should. I mean, they should have dominated Northwestern. Look at the success rate margin. They should have won that game by 4 or 5 scores if they don't turn it over. But they did not. They didn't. That's the reality. Against Purdue, they should have won by probably 2 scores, maybe 3. They did not. That's the reality. You get the point. Michigan is a team with more potential than what they've been showing. But that's the case with a lot of these teams that have talented rosters, but not elite coaching staffs, or they're young. And Michigan has both of those problems, along with some injuries and some unbalanced roster talent in where their offensive line and running backs, and that's amazing, but they just don't have anything at wide receiver outside of maybe one player or 2 if McCulley is on his A game, and that's pretty inconsistent. So I am leaning towards Michigan winning by 7 to 13 points. I don't think they'll quite pass 13.5. Wouldn't be shocked if they do. Would be a little bit surprised if they lose, given how bad they've looked 2 games in a row, and I just don't think they're that bad. So I think they'll play a little bit better in fundamental soundness here than against Northwestern or Purdue. But I have to hedge here. That's what predictions are. You're hedging different outcomes. There's the outcome here where Michigan wins by 50, like they did in 2021. That could happen. There's the outcome where Maryland wins by 10. They're leading in the game, they control it, Michigan can't get off the mat, and they maybe get a pick six to seal it and win by 10. I think the average median outcome here is Michigan winning by a little less than 2 full touchdowns, and therefore Maryland will cover that 13.5 point spread. Not exactly confident in that, though. As this pertains to Big Ten standings, Maryland, even if they win out, is not going to finish in the top half of Big Ten standings. For Michigan, a lot's in front of them. A college football playoff berth, not really a trip to Indy, but as I discussed at the beginning, that's a good thing. If Michigan beats Ohio State, I can promise you that due to matchups, Indiana beating you before, so they know what it's like to win, and the fact that they're not a rival, so they don't have that weird mental thing, and it's indoors, it's in a track meet, it's not in Ann Arbor. If you beat Ohio State and then face Indiana, Indiana will blow you out. That will not be a close game, especially since Indiana will be healthier, they'll be more rested, and they'll want to put on a show, regardless of who they play in the Big Ten championship game. It would be a similar prediction of mine if Ohio State were to rematch Michigan and Indy after losing. I'd pick Ohio State to win that game. Indoors, not on the road. It probably would be a majority Buckeye fans. It's hard to beat a good team twice. Michigan as a team is not good enough to put 2 great efforts back to back, especially when the first would result in a very emotional sensation, very emotional feelings in Ann Arbor. So I think it is to Michigan's benefit that even if they went out and beat Ohio State, they likely will not get to Indianapolis. I think that is to Michigan's benefit. That is my Michigan-Maryland preview and prediction. All the more I got to say about this game is Michigan should win. I think Michigan will win. I think they'll control it. But as friend of the channel, DJ Every Day, or DG Every Day, forget exactly what his Twitter handle says, Michigan has no business being a double-digit favorite over any Power 4 team. And I forget if he added this or not, but I will add it, with the caveat of being on the road. Michigan doesn't really have any business being that large of a favorite over a P4 team on the road, unless that team is Oklahoma State. Or you could even say maybe Purdue. And they played Purdue at home and could have lost that game. So Michigan wins, but I do think Maryland covers. Thank you for watching. It's my mission on College Football with Sam to make you the most informed, knowledgeable, and entertained fan as possible. We aren't perfect, but we hit the nail on the head more often than we hit our thumb with the hammer. Make sure to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, comment, and if you're here, you've probably already watched the whole video. So thank you for doing those things.